Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What was the argument back then to race fast, to build faster cars? Weren't they dangerous enough? And how was it like to be a race driver back then?
I started step by step. I was 18 years old and I got my first driving license. And my first car was a Lloyd 300 cubic inch, 19 horsepower. My second car was a Lloyd Alexander, already double CCM, 600 CCM and double horsepower. And then I started with the Isabella, and for me, I never thought to become a world champion. It was just I wanted to control a car at the limit and drive as many cars as possible. So I went step by step in my racing career.
What would have happened if you had listened to your parents?
This is a problem. My parents didn't allow me to go racing, so I could start racing, professional racing, only was 21 years old, because before I couldn't get the license, the FIA license. So I started quite late. I started when I was a mechanic at Porsche in the racing department, and in the evening I tuned my Isabella and I went racing at weekends, and my parents didn't know it. And then it happened that Christmas time there came a telegram from Mr. Borgward himself on the table of my father's desk, and it did say, "Congratulations to the performance of Jochen Neerpasch with the Isabella." And then you can imagine what happened in the family.
And how did you convince them to let you go forward?
Afterwards, I think they thought it's good that Mr. Borgward himself. So after that time, I was allowed to race, and then I started really.
Have you thought about safety back then compared to what's happening now? Have safety made the races a bit boring?
At the beginning, I didn't think about safety, but later on, when I was a professional driver, and especially in the later years was Shelby and was Ford, I thought about safety. And when I changed in the management, it was one of my first things to try to get safer racing, but not only technical wise, also for the drivers themselves, because at the time when I was racing, you didn't have any physical fitness people, so you were completely on your own. And the first thing we tried when we were in the management to train the drivers and have, let's say, the system with a driver and the technical side improved as a whole system.
Was it difficult to convince BMW to have a motorsport division?
No, it was the other way around. I was working for Ford and we developed the Capri as a very competitive car, and we did beat the BMWs. And when Bob Lutz came to BMW, he thought that's not good that we are beaten by Ford. And he offered me a job, he offered me to restart the BMW motorsport activities, and he offered me to have an own company, the BMW Motorsport GmbH.
Would BMW be the same without the M division, if it hadn't started back then?
I think we did have a big impact for the image of BMW with the company, and the good thing is, because we had a company, we were very flexible, so we could decide without asking too many people on the board. And if we saw an opportunity somewhere, we could react very quick. And I think this is a result because BMW Motorsport has a very important impact on the BMW image.
The Pro car was your idea. How did it feel for you to see pilots like Niki Lauda or racing your cars in your championship that was your idea?
Yeah, I mean, this was the idea to have them race against the best private drivers in GT and touring car at that time. The problem was, when we did build the M1, we had to build 400 cars for homologation within 1 year. And because we had a production problem with Lamborghini, we delayed, the production was delayed, and We could have been racing with the M1 only 2 years after the first car was produced. And therefore we had to think about a solution to go racing to before homologation. And then we had the idea not only to have a manufacturer's formula, but to have a step higher. And it was an evening I was together with Max Mosley in Munich in a bar in the evening, and we had the idea we do it before Formula One races, and we tried to have the Formula One drivers participating. And we have been drinking a little bit beer, and the next morning we thought, oh, the idea was not bad. And then we contacted Bernie Ecclestone, and he was in favor of the idea, and then he made it possible. But this was quite a difficult situation because we had to produce more than 20, 30 race-ready M1 cars within a short time. We had to sell the cars for the customers to compete, and also we had to convince the Formula One drivers to drive the cars. And this all happens in Zolder at the first race. And for example, Mario Andretti, he said, I will never drive the car in pro car. And then when he finished in the Friday practice within the first 5 of the Formula One, Max Mosley came and gave him $100, $200, $300, and after $500 he said, okay, I drive. And when he drove, all the others drove as well.
You stood behind the racing wheel, you were also an engineer, you were also a manager. Which position did you enjoy most?
Difficult to say. For me, the most difficult decision was in 1968. This was my most successful season in sports car racing, and then suddenly I got the offer from Ford to build up a racing department in Cologne. And it was very difficult for me because I was on the top of my racing career, and I did know I have to stop racing if I go to the management. On the other hand, I was a technical orientated driver, and for me the technical side was always as important as the driving side, and I did feel that I have the knowledge to do this. But I was a mechanic, I was a race driver, and suddenly I was the director of the Ford Motor Company, and without any management experience. And this was a difficult period, but within a short time, because I was an expert on the motor racing side, we were successful, so successful that we could beat the BMWs, and then the next step to come to BMW.
Advice on racing drivers, they try to this stream?
I mean, now the racing drivers have to start very early in kart already before 10 years. So to give an advice, it's quite difficult, but the main thing is you always have to try to keep, to be the best and never give up. But there's a lot of competition in the meantime, and to come the next step, it's always very difficult. But you have to concentrate, and you have to, let's say, to work on yourself that you are able to do the job.
What do you feel about the current M lineup? We have some great cars like M2, which is my favorite, M3, M4, but we also have the M badge on X5 and X6 on bigger cars.
First of all, I think my favorite M car is the M4. Because it's such a fantastic competition car. You can go on the Nürburgring Nordschleife and for the whole morning do fast laps, and afterwards you drive home. So that's a fantastic car. And I think also the whole M line, this is the real BMW. There are other BMWs now which are not anymore in this competitive form. So I like the M line very much.
And what's your take on autonomous vehicles? Do you think we will still gonna have racing drivers in 20, 30 years when people will forget how to drive, and the young ones, the ones that are born now or born in 5, 10 years, they don't need a driving license anymore?
Maybe it happens like this, but I don't like it at all. I think motor racing and motor driving is so important, and I like driving so much. So for me, it's like BMW. It's fun to drive, and if you are not able to drive anymore, you can go in the train or this. I can't see this future, but it will happen, of course.
What's your feeling when you saw this?
It's fantastic. I mean, Adrian did such a good job. I'm impressed.
Would you take it home?
It's a little bit too big, but I will have a photo of it and take it home.
Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Thank you.